The meeting is now called to order. Roll call, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Madam President. Unfortunately, Mrs. Jackson is unable to attend this evening. Everyone else is here. And 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda, we typically have public comment, but we do not have any regular public comment this evening. So our next item is consent, and tonight our consent items include a personnel report, claims, and payroll. And as a reminder for what consent means, this is our part of our agenda that's a designated section where routine items are grouped together. We vote on them all together, and it is sort of our business part of our meeting here. The consent typically includes items that we have to legally address during our meetings, but don't take up a lot of time. So it's the payroll, claims, and personnel report, again, that you'll see these typically on our consent items at our meetings. Do I have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Thank you, Katie. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Greg. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we will take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. At this time in our meeting, I will be suspending the regular board meeting and opening 3 public hearings to allow for public input regarding the proposed 2025 budgets, 2025 capital projects plan, and 2025 bus replacement plan. Per board policy 0167.3, when a public hearing is required by federal or state statute, the same rules followed during public comment apply during a public hearing, with the following exceptions. Advanced registration is not required, and speakers must speak on the topic of the public hearing. Before speaking, participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface their comments by an announcement of their name and group affiliation if applicable. Participants will each have 3 minutes to speak. As with other public comment, comments may not reference specific corporation employees, patrons, or students. Comments shall be directed to the board. No person may address or question individual board members. The school board will not act on or respond to questions or comments made during the public hearing, but will take them under advisement. On our September 9th meeting, Mr. McMichael presented our proposed 2025 budgets, 2025 capital projects plan, and 2025 bus replacement plan. The board discussed the proposals and authorized the administration to advertise for the public hearings. Mr. McMichael, do you have any comments before we invite input from the public?
I do. So the purpose of the public hearing is, as it implies, it's an opportunity for members of the public to comment on the budget, any comments they may want to make, and an opportunity for the board members to listen to those comments and consider them prior to actually adopting the budget. So as you noted, the budget was presented. There was no action, of course, on it. The second step is to have this public hearing, and then the third step is for the board to adopt the budget, which will happen at the next meeting in late October. Then it'll be submitted to the state because, well, the school board has to approve the budget. And the budget, by the way, is appropriation. It's really an approval to give authorization to spend the money that we have for the program. But then finally, the state also has to approve it. And so they will review everything. They, of course, would not approve a budget if there wasn't money to support it. So then they will approve it and have to approve it prior to December 31st. And this is a calendar year budget, and so our budget starts on January 1st and is over December 31st.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. McMichael. At this time, I will open the hearing on the 2025 budgets and offer members of the public an opportunity to make comments.
My name is Rob Bush. I've lived in Carmel for 33 years now. I appreciate the things the school board has done. I think that the school system we have is an excellent system. I know there's always room for improvement, but I'm enthusiastic about the things that have happened to date. My concern is in looking at the budget. I don't think there's enough information and explanation there for the general public to be able to understand exactly what's in the budget. I started a software company 30 years ago. I sold it just recently. It was at least successful. We had somebody be willing to pay $90 million for it. I've made proposals to the board of directors. I've put budgets together for 30 years, and I understand that process. I certainly don't understand running a school system as well as you do. But in that process, I know that during the year you're talking about initiatives at every meeting. But when it comes to time to put it into a budget, I think it's necessary for a narrative to be there to say, here are how all the initiatives that we've discussed during the year show up in our budget. This is the way that it affects our budget. I know you've talked about an initiative for mental health, equity, and inclusion. I think those are important things to do, but they should show up in your budget as this is what we're spending on our initiatives. And I think a budget should also include some kind of way to monitor or measure what it is you're doing. How well did we do with our mental health initiatives? How are we going to measure what we're doing over the course of the next year? This year you have a fairly substantial increase in budget. It looks like it's littered throughout in different categories. It's not clear how you've intentionally taken the additional money that's going to be available next year and said this is how it applies to the initiatives that we have in place, and this is the result in the budget. The numbers, the income statement, the balance sheet, the sources and uses of funds are certainly important parts of the budget, but I don't think it's complete without the narrative, and I know that that may be a summary of what you've done throughout the year, but it's still important to put it out there. I've spent several days trying to understand it so that I can explain it to the people in my neighborhood, and I have an MBA in finance, but I'm telling you that all the information is not there and available for me to be able to explain the budget that you have in place now.
Thank you. Up next.
Do I get the full 27 minutes? Just kidding. I'm John Curtis. I'm a 25-year-old, no, I wish, a 25-year resident of Carmel, and I lived over at Carolina Commons all those years. And I've served as the past president of that board for a number of terms, at least 3. All my kids attended Carmel Clay, Carmel Middle School, Forest Dale, and one went to Carmel High School and the other went to Guerin. And my purpose, like his and others, are to kind of learn more about the budget process, which I know is very complex. But before I begin, and no one ever does this at these meetings, I wanted to say thanks for sharing your experiences on the board, particularly because having served as president of a military-based closure commission at Fort Bend, I've chaired and co-founded a charter middle school, and I run a bunch of other companies. I know what a challenge it can be, and especially with 116,000 students and a bunch of parents. Last Sunday, the Social Security Administration, most of you won't be able to relate to this yet, announced a 2.5% raise in Social Security benefits. Now, when you get to be my age, which is 74, you look forward to those raises. And the problem with that is we happened to have a board meeting on Sunday, this past Sunday, at the HOA, and we were talking about property tax increases and the cost of living and all the other things that went with that, and there was a great when property bills came out 2 years ago, there was a great concern that everybody was freaking out that they went up 30%. Some went up higher than that in our community, and I presume that's constant throughout the community. So I happened to mention that the budget was up for review, and I should probably come, or some of us should come. So here I am, a duly appointed representative of that HOA, just to discuss the challenges that we have with a 2.5% increase and a 35% tax increase. So the question is, for me, how is the board allocating its increase in revenue, particularly from those increases, from the basic grants, the referendum, and the property tax increases, which appear to me to be in the tens of millions of dollars. And particularly, according to the your 6/30, 2024 Form 9, we had $53 million in cash. So my suggestion is that we are more transparent, and maybe that's not fair because I'm sure there's a lengthy process goes on, but we could share more information with the community, and particularly those community members that are recipients of federal benefit. You know, am I over 60? Am I done? Oh, well, that was my suggestion. There's more, but I'll get off of it.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further comments this evening? All right, I will close the hearing on the 2025 budgets and open the hearing regarding the 2025 capital projects plan, and again offer members of the public an opportunity to make comments. All right, seeing none, I will close the hearing on the 2025 capital projects plan and open another hearing regarding the 2025 bus replacement plan and offer members of the public an opportunity to make comments. Seeing no comments, then I will close the hearing on the 2025 bus replacement plan and reconvene the regular school board meeting. Next is our action item for this evening, and that is the adoption of the preliminary resolution regarding the issuance of general obligation bonds and the authorization of the publication of a notice of public hearing in conjunction with the proposed issuance of the bonds and the appropriation of the proceeds of the bonds. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. This proposed bond issue in the amount of $6,250,000 is primarily, it's for technology, but the board will recall that I had previously shared that we'd had a project plan for 2026 to replace the tennis courts at the high school. And the condition of them was such that we felt it would be better to move that project up. And so we've done that and plan to actually take bids on that project later this fall. And we're using the 2024 bond revenue to provide for the tennis courts. And then this project, which we otherwise would have used for technology. And the technology is part of our technology expenses. It's primarily for devices and so forth, and primarily for students. But when we include that in a bond issue, it's typically for 3 years. It's the expenditure for 3 years, not just 1 year. So the plan was we'll move the tennis courts up, use the 24 bond revenue for the tennis courts, and then sell this GO bond to replace the technology. So $5 million of this is for technology. And then the balance of that is we have a project at the high school in the main cafeteria for the exhaust hood system, as well as an early childhood playground at Woodbrook Elementary School. The board may recall that we provided 2 more classrooms at that school because of that program growth that we needed additional space, and so we have not provided a very small play area for those children.
Thank you, Mr. McMichael. May I have a motion to adopt the preliminary resolution regarding the issuance of general obligation bonds and authorization to publish a notice of public hearing regarding the appropriation of the proceeds of the bonds?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Katie?
Mr. McMichael, since we have a great audience, will you explain a little bit about what a bond is? And I'd also love for you to talk about our ratings as how far as bonds go.
Yes, and so first, when we talk about bond issues, it's a form of debt, and so and it's that's what is used to for schools when we finance various projects, including most of it's facility projects, but also things like technology. And so bonds are sold, and then we use the proceeds to do whatever the project is, and then they're paid off with an annual schedule. These bonds, for example, they'll not be longer than 5 years, and likely be maybe as short as 3-year payoff. Our history has been that many bonds will in municipalities will be a 20 or 25-year bond issue, and we're fortunate to be able to pay ours off much faster than that. And of course, we try to do that as best we can because we are paying interest, and so as with any debt, the sooner we pay it off, the better in that sense. And so so that's what it is. We have the highest rating, actually, or one of the highest rated. There's about 4 school districts that have the rating that we have, and we're one of the 4, which is A++ rating. So so our rating is very good with Standard & Poor's, and which results in lower interest as well for the community. So we intend to keep the rating as high as it is now, and so that's kind of the process. Again, you can sell bonds, and it's really just you're going into debt. So you can do that for any capital expense, really. As I said, most of it's facility and new construction, major renovations, but also it can be capital expenses such as technology.
And Mr. McMichael, thank you for that report. You just touched on a sentence that you just said a sentence that I have heard often out in the public. People asking about the bonds and that money going towards capital expenses. And could you just reiterate that money it's not appropriate to use that for salaries, wages, teachers' expense, because sometimes I think that's very confusing because this is such a complex process.
It is confusing, and it's particularly confusing if a school district finds itself in difficult financial times, and you see that you can read it in the news often, unfortunately, that a district may be laying off staff or giving they have no funds to give salary increases, and yet they're maybe building a multi-million-dollar facility. And so, of course, from the public, it's like, how can you afford this, but you can't afford to give teachers a raise or whatever the issue is? And the answer is that in Indiana, schools are the funding is called fund accounting, which means that we have about 6 funds. There's a very specific purpose on which each fund can be used. So, for example, you can't use debt proceeds to pay salaries. You can't use operational funds to pay salaries, and you can't pay operational expenses from our education fund, for example. It's only for what you and I would consider direct classroom expenses out in the building. So people in this building are not paid from that fund. Any number utilities are not paid from that fund. Only primarily teachers, but also instructional assistants and people that work in the school, direct services to children. And so, and each fund has some type of a control. If it's the education fund, it's determined by which is revenue coming from the state taxes. That's determined by a formula, a pretty complex formula that the state legislature approves every 2 years. So that ultimately that dictates how much revenue you're going to get and how much additional revenue you're going to receive. If it's a bond issue, then the process is going to ensure that the tax rate is sufficient to pay off the bonds. So there's a practical limit in terms of what the public would tolerate, because there is no, a long approval process. But once it's approved, then that's a fund that the rate is set sufficient to pay the debt payments. And if it's the operations fund, it's controlled by a levy or a dollar amount, in other words, and there's a formula and so forth that dictates that. And then if it's our referendum fund, it's controlled by a tax rate. And what was alluded to earlier, the rate stays the same, but the revenue goes up if the property values go up. And so each fund has its own method of control as to how it's managed, and each fund has a purpose.
Do you want to mention how this is impacting the tax rate?
Well, I would. We maintain a very level tax rate, and particularly we focus on debt, for example, and we've maintained a very level tax rate. It's part of our financial management. Our intent is one, we think that philosophically that's fair to the community. Some communities have tax rates that go up and down, so they may sell bonds and build a building. They pay off the bonds. The building gradually deteriorates, and then but their rate goes down because they paid off these bonds and they have this very old building. And so if you're paying taxes during that time, you're paying less taxes. Then when they need to build a new building, and sometimes it's several new buildings, then they have to spike the tax rate because they need a very large amount of money. So we try to do projects and maintain our facilities, forecast what the needs will be in a way that we try to manage that. So typically, if you saw our bond issues, we'll have some bond issues paying off while another bond issue goes on. And so it's a little more complex than that, but that's the idea, that we maintain a rate. And by the way, we have a very enviable rate, and we're fortunate because that's in part because we have a high assessed value. The property values in Carmel are very good, which tends to drive a lower tax rate. And so we have a low tax rate. We have the lowest in Hamilton County, and one of the very lowest of any larger city in the state. And so when we sell bond issues, even if it's for millions of dollars, we're not raising the tax rate because we're planning that in such a way that to the extent new debt's coming on, old debt is going up.
Just one more question. How many years has that tax rate been flat?
Well,
Yes.
Short answer is about 30 years. I say short answer because over those years, the way the taxes are the rates and so forth have changed, but essentially it's been level for about 30 years.
Question on the bond. Trying to understand, or we're kind of shifting around. I remember we talked about this before with the sudden need for tennis court repairs came up sooner than we had hoped for or planned for. But so we took monies out of the 24 bond that was for technology and did the tennis court work or planning to, and then we're swapping that, the need to do the technology to this new bond, 26. Am I understanding that right?
That's pretty close. So in our 24 bond issue, we identified several projects within that issue. Two large ones was a major renovation for Cherry Tree Elementary School and a significant project at the Carmel High School Stadium as far as the stadium proper. Now, the tennis courts are on the same site. And also, as I said, about $7.5 million for technology for the next 3 years. So essentially what we're doing is we are using a part of that bond issue for these tennis courts, which will result in less funds that we originally anticipated to be used for technology, and then we're replacing that with this bond issue. Now, of course, we won't have that expense in 2026 that we had earlier planned for. So it's a matter of we were able to do the tennis project earlier, a year earlier, and we didn't need the technology money for 2024. And so the idea here is we'll replace it with this issue, and then we'll have the technology funds available for 24 or 25 and 26 for that matter.
So in effect, what we were planning to spend on the bond for 2026, which we're looking at now, is the same fundamental amount as we had planned before. We're just swapping the scope from one bond to another. Is that accurate?
I think so. What we're doing is we are doing a tennis project and using funds that are already available, bond funds that are available, and we will do that project. But that then, if we stop there, then we would run short of funds we need for technology. And so this issue will provide the funds for technology for 25 and 26. And then when we get to, we anticipate another bond issue in 26. And so at that point, though, it will not include tennis courts, which earlier we had it planned for 26. So we're basically doing the tennis courts early, and so doing that early, and then the offset will be in 26. So all things equal, we'll spend more now, and then less in 26 because we simply have done this project earlier.
So is it a wash as far as
By 26, it's basically a wash.
Okay, thank you.
For those of you that are curious, the tennis court, these huge cracks opened up, and they were at a level that we couldn't repair them. So it ended up being a need for a replacement.
Yeah, we knew they were due for replacement. That facility opened in 1990, and we've had, not that we haven't done any work since then, but as noted, as you know, tennis courts, or at least when those were built, they're asphalt. So sometimes with change in temperature in the winter and so forth, it can deteriorate and crack, and that happened to a greater extent than we thought we could manage until 26, and we do temporary repairs and so forth. But given the condition of them, and we were able to do it because we had the funds to do it, we thought it would be in the interest of the school and the community to do them in 24 and 25 rather than wait till 26.
So more of a safety issue at this
Yes,
point.
I was personally concerned about, and others too, of course, that somebody could trip over the cracks, and not to mention they aren't great for playing tennis, but certainly the safety was a priority.
Okay. Could you give me an example? I'm just curious as to what the technology part is.
Well, this technology through bonds is primarily for devices. So I forget the number, somebody will tell us, but we have one-to-one devices for students, so that's 16,000 Chromebooks, and I think the number is more like 17 or 18,000 because there's staff and other uses of technology. This money could be used for sound systems or any technology, projectors, but the majority of it is used for devices.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just, one comment on the holding the tax rate flat, and I think you've done a unique and a great job over the years doing that so that the burden stays the same from year to year mostly, but it is notable that the tax levy portion of the budget has gone up about 45 to 48% over the last 5 years. So that flat rate does generate a lot more revenue.
Yeah, although I would say, by the way, we talk about being level, but it does come down occasionally too. What it hasn't done is go up. It actually declined the last 2 years. And so, and we've thrown, a number of numbers out about, just as you just did with, the amount that has gone up in the last 5 years. One of those years, as was alluded to earlier, was when the assessed value went up, and it didn't go up 35%, but it did go up 13%. And so, and we received 13% more money because we did not lower the tax rate, and we didn't lower the tax rate, and we maintained it because we lost money, in a significant amount really, from our state revenue because we had declining enrollment right after COVID. And so that's, for every student, that's $7,500. And so this district opted to keep the local money at an expense of about $35 a year per taxpayer, and not cut over $1 million of services to children. So those were the choices, and that's the choice that we made. And so prior to that, our revenue has gone up more than inflation because the assessed value is not just inflation, it's also growth. So as we've had most of the last 30 years, we've been a growing school district. And so as new businesses and new residents come in, adds to the tax rate. So our increase has tended to be more, so if you identified inflation as 3%, we might be getting 4 or 4.5% because it's not just inflation, it's also growth. And so in a growing community, 45% or 40%, I haven't done the math lately, but it's going to be more than in a community that is either level or declining. So.
Does that somewhat help make up for the fact that we are one of the lowest reimbursed per student in the state in order to be able to pay teachers? And
no, it's not that so much. I mean, we're the second lowest in terms of revenue from the state for the education fund. But in fairness, that's primarily because we also have a low poverty rate. And so districts that have a higher poverty rate receive more money because at-risk children, every educator that will agree that it takes more money to educate and try to educate in that environment. But we have a referendum, and we're one of about 50 or so school districts out of about 300 that have one. So we're very fortunate. Several of our neighbors have one as well, so it seems common in Hamilton County, but you get outside of Hamilton County, it's not so common. And we have that when effectively Indiana became a referendum state. And that happened at the great beginning of the Great Depression, which happened to be the very time that recession seemed like a depression at the time, but depending on what you were doing then, it could feel like a depression. But nevertheless, so in about 2010, the state also changed the funding and said, we're going to fund your education fund with state tax dollars, primarily sales and income tax, instead of a combination of that and local property tax, and we'll lower your property tax. Now, they raised sales tax, by the way, but that didn't come out real loud. As much as we're going to fund the education fund. And so So they did, and then the recession hit and the money dried up because sales and income tax is not as, quote, dependable uh, as property tax, which is just a polite way of saying that if you don't pay your property tax, they'll sell your house. Um, but if you don't buy, if you lose your job, whatever, and you're not buying things, then sales tax revenue goes down, and if you don't have a job, your income tax goes down. Thus, districts almost immediately, including Carmel, began to propose local referendums. And Carmel was very fortunate that in the height of that recession, this community, to the extent of almost 70%, essentially said, yes, we're willing to allow you to raise our taxes. Because taxes are capped in Indiana, and the only way you can get more money than that is if the voters say they will allow you to, and they will give it to you. And so they did, and it's been renewed since then, and they're good, by the way, for 8 years. Started out at 7, and so Carmel very much depends on that local revenue to provide the level of educational programming that we provide. And it's up to about 28 million, and if that wasn't here, you would not see the same educational program. It just wouldn't be possible. So.
All right, we can now take a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. The next part of our agenda is our workshop topic, and today it's on data privacy. Mrs. Cloud.
Having us here tonight. Do we have a cordless one, Colleen, that we could grab? Thank you. I'll stand over here in the moment while we wait on a microphone. You may recall that we have joined you each October for the last few years to talk about cybersecurity because October is Cybersecurity Month. And tonight we're excited to be here to share with you some additional resources that we have information on for our community and for our teachers about how we can continue to build on that culture of digital safety here in Carmel Clay Schools. So give me just a moment here. Sorry about that, to the recording studio in the back room there. All right. Okay. So my name is Christy Cloud, and I'm the Director of Technology. And like I said, we're excited to be here with you tonight to tell you a little bit more about Digital Safety Month. So we have 3 parts to our agenda tonight. We're going to start by talking a little bit about Digital Safety Month and why do we call it that instead of Cybersecurity Month. We're going to talk about a new state law that went into effect this July regarding student cell phones. And then we're going to do a little work, and we'll invite you down to the table when we're ready to do that, to talk about digital safety in action. So this month, as I mentioned, nationally and internationally is known as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And so in Carmel Clay Schools, we are participating in Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but we have rebranded that as Digital Safety Month. And the reason that we've done that is when you think about cybersecurity, you immediately look at us, the technology department, and you think, hey, it's their job to keep us safe from all those bad actors. But really, cybersecurity is not just about us, it's about all of us, the community at large, and what we're going to do to protect our kids, our staff, our employee data, our student data, and to keep everybody safe. And so that's why we've rebranded this month as Digital Safety Month for Carmel Clay Schools. As such, we are having a fishing tournament right now for our staff to participate. We're attempting to catch them, unfortunately, clicking on a link that might be a trick, and we're trying to see if they can identify those trick emails and report them to us so that we can help build that culture of safety. And I'll tell you what, the phishing mailbox has been going crazy this month. Everybody's reporting everything. They are definitely on the hunt for those bad campaigns that are out there, those bad actors that are trying to get at our data. And so our staff is doing a great job of catching those fish this month. We're super proud of them. So the second thing I mentioned that we wanted to give you an update on is the new cell phone policy that went into effect this July, and that was part of Indiana code that went into effect. And if you read the code that's listed there, it basically says during instructional time, the students are not able to use a wireless communication device that has any means of communicating, whether it be via voice, whether it be via text messaging, or any other data communication between two people, whether it be students, teachers, anyone. And the purpose of this really was after cell phone use in the classroom. And so this July, like all other schools in Indiana, we put into place a new policy to talk about what should happen in classrooms with cell phones and to ensure that our students are not using cell phones during instructional time unless it is approved by a teacher. So when we did that, many of our classrooms became equipped with a chart much like this. And when the students come into class, they simply take their cell phones and they slide them into the pocket. And there they sit for the remainder of the period. And then at the end of the period, when the teacher allows it, they can pick up their phone. Now, if there happens to be an activity in class that day that the teacher has approved the use of the cell phone for, the students could absolutely use those because it would be under the direction of a teacher. But since all of our students are fortunate to have a one-to-one device, that's not necessary very often. So what I have for you now are 3 quotes from 3 of our teachers at our different levels who are giving you a little highlight of what they've thought about this new policy. So Tony is an English teacher at Carmel High School. These are real quotes from our real teachers. And this teacher feels like this has been a real game changer for students and for teachers. The teachers haven't had to focus on kids being distracted by their cell phones as much. They haven't had to say, put your phone away, pay attention. The kids have been more on task because their cell phones are put up. And he says the first couple weeks were a bit of an adjustment because we had to figure out the policies, we had to figure out the procedures, how are we going to flow in the classroom, how are we going to put things up, make sure we get them out at the end of class. But he says once that has happened, the phone-related distractions have greatly decreased and the engagement in the classroom has greatly increased. And he appreciates as a teacher that it's one less thing that he has to deal with. This is our next quote. It's from a middle school educator. This is from Leslie. She's a middle school teacher at one of the middle schools here in Carmel. And she is complimenting this policy because it has had such a positive impact on students and their attention to learning. So she's really excited about it. She thought for sure the kids were going to be pushing back and really unhappy that they had to give up their cell phones because they're so used to having them all the time. But what she said is it actually feels more like a relief for the kids because I don't have my cell phone. Kate can't possibly be texting me because Kate doesn't have her cell phone. So neither one of us are missing out on anything, and we can both then engage in the work that's actually happening in the classroom for teaching and learning. And so Leslie just is really super excited about the face-to-face interaction and the work that has been occurring in the classroom. And then we've got one more teacher here who quoted this for us from the high school. And you will notice that we don't have an elementary teacher because most of our elementary friends don't bring cell phones with them on a daily basis, and they certainly don't have them out in the classroom if they did have one in their backpack for a safety reason. So we don't have any elementary quotes. But this teacher is a special education teacher at the high school, and she comments how in her 17 years of teaching, she believes this is the first year she has had to chase missing assignments the least because her students are more engaged when they're in the classroom and therefore they are completing more assignments. So she, again, is very complimentary of this new practice that is in place. So we are ready to get started with some digital safety in action. And since we are going to be participating in a classroom learning environment, I'll invite you to join me at the table and to place your cell phone in the pockets so that we might get started.
Can we ask questions first
You can, sure.
regarding
Sure.
that? And I have a question. Go ahead. So my question is we've had cell phone policies in place. And this is going to be you, Dr. B. Is it that we're getting, I guess I'm asking what's the difference? Like, why is it clicking this time when we've always had rules in place? Is it, I'm not going to guess what it is. Can you answer that question?
I obviously can't attest to exactly why it's clicking this time, but from the teachers that I have talked with in the classrooms that I have visited, it is the formality of putting a chart in place. Every teacher is doing the same thing together, and so it's not like Dr. Beresford's room, I can use my cell phone, but in Mr. Browning's room, I cannot use my cell phone, and back and forth. Every teacher is on the same page. We're not allowing them during instructional time, and it makes it easy for all of us as educators to stick together, and it also makes it easy, like I mentioned in Leslie's quote, for the kids to not feel like they're missing out because we're all doing the same thing.
So does this only apply to classroom time, or are there other times during the day when kids do have their cell phones, and has we seen any impact to those times?
I cannot speak to whether we're seeing an impact in those other times. Kids do have their cell phones with them, obviously, when they're moving between classrooms, when they're going to lunch, different times like that. So I cannot honestly attest to whether we've seen an impact there. Maybe Dr. Beresford has some information, or we could certainly inquire from our administrators at the building level what they're seeing.
One more question. So we were asked a question this evening about mental health, and I know we have reports on the number of appointments that are given out in the year for our mental health appointments. Is there any way that we could track or see if there's any correlation between less cell phone use and maybe less mental health needs? I mean, is that something, I mean, that's probably not a data privacy thing, but I mean, is that something, there might be some correlation. I know that we have been involved in considered a lawsuit for social media, and I think many reports and the National Institute of Health and other organizations have shown that the huge impact that these devices have on children's mental health and adults, and on top of the isolation during the pandemic. I would think that having these times, and I think it is a relief for many of the families to see that there are times and it's okay and the kids live through it and everybody's on equal footing, to not have these screens in front of their faces where they're this FOMO, they're thinking that they're missing out on comments, or other kids, there's a triangulation of kids maybe talking about them when they don't have access to their phone. So I don't know if there's any way we could track to see if this is having an impact on our students' mental health.
So I don't know that we will be able to tell specifically that this would be the only cause that is causing a reduction in mental health visits, but certainly we meet with the student services team on a frequent basis, and we can certainly help dive into their data and what is happening over time. So as from this school year compared to last year, at the end of this year, do we see any reduction? Might this be a cause of that? It may be. And we can certainly talk with them about if there's any information that they have about those appointments or visits that identify specifically, was the student struggling with a social media addiction in any way, or a social media, maybe not addiction, might be a strong word, but a strong desire to have their device with them.
Thank you. I know that was a little off topic, but
No,
thank you very much.
That's great. We do meet with them regularly, so we'll certainly bring that up.
I have one more thing. It's more of a comment. As a parent, I think it's nice because I am just as guilty as maybe the next person of, I'm in the middle day and I need to tell my high schooler something, and I will send her a text message, where it's not important enough that in the olden days I would have called the office and said, can you get this message to Abigail? So I think that too, it's also good knowing that she's not going to have as much access. While at the same time, I like that she does have access. The world that we live in, I like that in, a bad situation that, I can live 360 and see where the heck that, she is and everything. So I think that it's a good balance, and I commend your team and our professionals who have, depending on the class and what they're doing and all the different things, that they have a good balance between when for them to have their electronics and when not to. And I think that we'd be naive in saying that that technology is not part of our kids' lives. And so I think it's really good, and I appreciate and commend everyone for working on that good balance.
Thank you. Okay, so oh, sorry.
And just some more comments too, kind of along the lines of Jennifer's is, I think it's a wonderful thing to see that teachers are seeing that the kids are benefiting by having, you know, more one-on-one interactions. And I think, Jennifer, you shared some time ago at a meeting as a business owner that you're having difficulty finding young employees that had good social or communicative school skills and whatnot. And I think it's, you know, my conclusion is I don't think these phones and having, you know, children just buried in them for so many hours a day is probably causing a lot of that problem. So I really applaud where our legislators have taken us and where we had before that, and trying to limit this use in the classroom. I would think, why would we ever allow them to use these things at all during a classroom scenario? But I would like to see us extend that so we get more benefits of the kids interacting with those around them during other periods where they have more social time, like lunchtime. And I've heard reports from parents that they see some kids are able to bring in and access sites that aren't that we block with our school-issued Chromebooks, you know, sites that we don't want them going to on our devices. But, you know, once they're on their device, they can do that. And I would like to see us think about that. And I think it's a great idea to ask if there's a way to measure it. Sometimes it's hard to measure these kinds of things. But if there's a way to see that, you know, we can really improve the social and emotional health of our kids by limiting this use. And I know we have a bullying problem, and I think a lot of that comes from social media. And it's like, certainly, you know, they're at school, you know, just a portion of the day, a third of the day, and there's plenty of time after to have these devices for whatever their parents might want them to have. And as Katie said, you know, we used to get hold of kids under urgent needs through other ways. And so it's just something I think we ought to ponder and watch closely, that if we're seeing some real positive results here. I know we're participating in a class action suit. I haven't heard much status on it, but we participated in a national class action suit against social media companies because of harm that children have had from some of these kinds of things. So I think, you know, part of the teaching process, I think, would be good, that kids can learn to talk to those around them at the lunch table and at recess and other things. So I just wanted to underscore a bit what Jennifer said. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm not going to let you be distracted and sneak your cell phones down to the table. So what I asked you to do before we started our conversation there was go ahead and join me at the dais, or at the table from the dais, and go ahead and stick your cell phone in the pocket chart. And I'm going to have some friends from the technology department join you at the table for our activities that we're going to do next. You will need your computer, yes. Not your cell phone, but your computer. I think that if he would sit with maybe Mr. Cronin or Mrs. Pagrazinski, they could partner together. And I do think Mrs. House might have grabbed us an extra device in the foyer as well that we could grab. Thank you for participating in our pocket chart activity. You may pick a number. You have no cell phone. Okay. She didn't give you one. Okay, I understand. That's okay. Whoever you sit next to, you have a technology person next to you, and they would be glad to partner with you and their devices, with their device. Can you leave it in there all the time? And to that end, Dr. Beresford just mentioned, you know, could he leave it in there all the time? And we do see students at certain tables at lunch where they all take their phones and they put them in the middle of the table because they have made a commitment to each other that they want to, you know, be communicating. And so those are really some of the lessons we're helping kids to have, is to talk about what ways can you self-monitor yourself and stay engaged with the people that you're around. So thank you for participating with us tonight. All right, so to get started on our next activities, we're going to make sure that you can get to the Carmel Clay School website, and then we would like you to click on Parents in the top right-hand corner. So I'll give you just a moment to make sure you can all get there. If you need any help, you do have a technology friend at your end of the table. Give you just one more minute. All right. So let me introduce the team while they're helping just one or two more of you get connected and making sure you're in the right place. We have 5 members of the team, but you'll notice there are only 4 of them here today, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go through this. So first we have Kate Masterson. Kate is the first ever K-12 Assistant Director of Digital Safety and Privacy in the state of Indiana. And that really is a kudos to you as a board for recognizing how important this work is of digital safety and privacy and keeping student data safe, that we invested a position in that. Kate also helps greatly with our cybersecurity initiatives and is very much responsible for all of the cute graphics you see tonight and the cyber phishing campaign that is going on that we're trying to catch you in right now. In addition, we have Terry Howell, who is our network administrator. Terry Howell has been with the district for over 25 years and is responsible on a daily basis for keeping the bad actors out and the good actors in and making sure that all of our wired connections are up to date, fast, and reliable. We have Abby Pegrozinski. Abby is one of our 2 trainers for the district. Nick Knoll is our second trainer, who you'll notice is absent from this table tonight. He is on a vacation with his family because his students attend another district, and we're working on getting them across the table over here to join us in Carmel Clay Schools. But both of them are responsible for all of the teacher training, partnering alongside with teachers in the classroom, working on things like how to manage your classroom with devices and how to help encourage students to stay off their devices using all of the different technology tools. That's the work that Abby and Nick do. And then the gentleman at the head of the table down there is Mr. Eric Cronin, and Eric Cronin is our wireless administrator for the district. So he is ultimately responsible for everything you're doing right now, making sure that all of the wireless connectivity throughout the district works. And in addition, Eric leads our cybersecurity team for the district as well and has been responsible for some obtaining some state-level grants to help fund different cyber initiatives that we're doing as well. So they're all here, and they're going to help you, and they're also going to share some of the presentation tonight. So we're going to have, tonight's presentation is like a small play. We have 3 acts, and during Act 1, our protagonist is an elementary student who is seeking permission from their teacher to play a new game in the classroom. During Act 2, we will move on to the middle school, where we have a middle school student who is trying to convince his family to get them a cell phone. Bro, right? All right, and then we're going to move on to Act 3, in which we are at the high school, in which the protagonist learns about why a VPN is not allowed on the Carmel Clay Schools network. We hope you'll learn something too. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Masterson, who is going to lead us through Act 1. And we do have some players in our play to join us. And the setting for Act 1 is a bright and cheery elementary school classroom. The students are scattered around the room, working in small groups. And Carlos approaches his teacher, Miss Masterson, with his Chromebook.
I'm going to turn around.
Miss Masterson.
Excuse me, Miss Masterson, I have a question about my Chromebook. My cousin showed me a game this weekend that he gets to play in school, and I wanted to know if we can play it too. It's called Roblox, and it's so cool. You can use it to build video games.
That sounds like so much fun, Carlos, and I know you love video games. But there's a couple things we need to do before we know if we can use this game in the classroom. So board members, I would invite you, if you get to that parents page, you should be able to scroll down and see an icon for Learn Platform. I, as a teacher, need to go to Learn Platform to see if a tool has been approved for use in the classroom. My view on the screen right now is the teacher view. You'll see the public community view on your screen. But I'd like you to do a little search and see if Roblox is a tool that we are allowed to use in the classroom here at CCS. If you search Roblox, ROBLOX, because you know, you got to be cool with your spelling now.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Roblox is not in our approved list, which means I, as the teacher, can request access to see if it can be added to our library. That means we'll look at the terms of service and the privacy policy and get a data privacy agreement with that vendor if necessary to share student data with that tool. But in the meantime, I want to check out another resource to see if this is even something that I want to request. Because if it's not worth the committee's time to review the tool, I don't want to bother them with that. So I'm going to have you go back to that parents page, and you should also see a link on the parents page to a website called Common Sense Media. Now, Common Sense Media is a phenomenal resource for both educators and for parents. So what I've done as a teacher, I've switched to the For Educators tab across the top, and I'm going to repeat that search and search for Roblox to see what the educational recommendations are. Now, obviously, as a parent, if you were looking at this as a game to play, you know, at home with the kids, you could search the parent side as well. So I took a look at the Roblox, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are if this is a tool that I should request for use in my classroom. Participatory members in our interactive play. You at the table. Yes, please.
I will answer. At first glance, it looks great. Grades 3 to 12, does computer science, it's got 4 out of 5 learning ratings. But then once you start reading, you say that the cons are, with millions of users worldwide, it's impossible, keyword, to control the people and content students will encounter. Red flag.
I would 100% agree. So as a teacher, I'm not sure that this is a tool that I'm even comfortable requesting. If you read more into the literature about Roblox, you'll find that Common Sense Media wishes that there was an educational portal specifically built for schools that might make this tool safer. But as it stands right now, to me, the risks do not outweigh any potential educational benefits. So I'm not going to request this tool in Learn Platform, but what I want to do is hop back to Learn Platform and see if there's another tool that we might use. Because I know, Carlos, that you love building video games, and a huge part of that is computer science. So I'd love to see if code.org is an option for us to use. So it's code.org. If you search code, let's see if it comes up. And it does. Code.org is a tool that is approved for use K-12. We have a data sharing agreement with them. They are a phenomenal educational company, and we can confirm that by going back to Common Sense Media and looking at their education rating. They've done, you know, it's earned a Common Sense selection seal, which is a nice little bonus. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but in reading more about code.org on this website, we can see that it's got focused activities that allow students to work at their own pace. It does block-based coding and exposes kids to computer science in a way that is fun and engaging. And I think this would be a great resource to use in the classroom instead of Roblox, Carlos. So sorry.
That's okay.
And it's a great tool for parents to use as well. So I'm ready to send something home to your parents because one of our trainers prepared a little resource because you can use code.org to get reviews on games and apps and books and movies.
So it could tell you if a movie is too scary for you to watch?
That is definitely something that you and your parents could use code.org for. And I'd love to show the video that we have prepared by our trainer.
Hey everyone, I am Nick Knoll, Training and Development Specialist for Carmel Clay Schools. So here's my scenario. My daughter was invited to a spooky Friday night backyard movie party, and on the Evite it said they were going to be watching the new Beetlejuice movie, which is something I can't say 3 times. So I went on my trusted website, commonsensemedia.org. If you don't know what commonsensemedia.org is, think of it like your personal guide to navigating the digital world. So you can look up anything from TV shows to games to apps to websites. Think of it as your friend that has all the right answers, that person you don't want to play trivia with because they win every time. It's your best pal that keeps you informed and up to date on all things media. So I looked up the movie, and it gave me reviews. It told me what ages it says it's appropriate for. It gave me this parents need to know box, which is one of the coolest things on the site. And so it kind of breaks down the movie. It gets into the details of the movie. It can give you the comment section with comments from kids and parents alike, and who doesn't want to read a comment section? Now, I'm sure you're all wondering, what did I decide to do with that movie saga?
So I'm going to pause it there. What would you have done as a parent in this situation? You can make up a kid or answer for one of your own kids. And looking at that review of that movie.
I think it would depend on, did he say how old?
She's 10.
Oh, yeah, then no. But,
Fourth grade student, yeah.
oh, yeah, sorry, missed that key factor. It's right here, sorry. So for me, I would say no for her age, but I think it's also great, dependent on the age, like I'd probably let my junior in high school see it.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about this website. It gives you lots of information to make the best decision for your kid because every kid is different. Every app, every book, every site is different. And so it's going to depend on a lot of different factors. But having all of this information is a huge benefit. So we'll see what Mr. Knoll did.
That played out. Well, the movie was rated for ages 13 and up, and so I showed my 10-year-old daughter the trailer, and she got spooked out. I said, well, it's not going to permanently scar her to go to this thing, but she got spooked, and like father, like daughter, she's a scaredy cat like me, and the trailer just kind of creeped her out, and she ended up declining the invitation to go. But another great win for Common Sense Media. And they're even working on new technology to develop ratings for AI and different things that would be suitable for children using AI. And in the AI revolution era, Common Sense Media is a great tool to have. So now you know more about Beetlejuice. Oh no. Ah, who's there?
Now we're going to move on to Act 2. The setting for Act 2 is the kitchen of the family home. Aunt Abby is visiting from out of town, and Emily approaches to ask a question.
Aunt Abby, I just wanted to let you know that I made a list of all of the things I want for my birthday. It's not very long. Well, actually, it's just one thing. I would like a cell phone, please.
Well, that's a very big decision to make, so let's kind of talk through that, Emily, and we'll figure out a good solution for that request. So first, let's consider our options. We don't have to jump right to a smartphone with all of the apps and all of the bells and whistles. It may be more appropriate for our student or our child, or my niece in this case, to do one of these first two options. There are phones that come without an app store or a web browser, similar to a GAB phone, that do provide the ability to text and call, but don't have some of those other temptations that might get them into some trouble, potentially. Or another option could be a smartwatch like an Apple Watch, which can also text and call, but limits the ability to have games and apps and all those other things. Or a third option could be to go with a smartphone, but think about some restrictions that we might want to place on that phone. Speaking of those restrictions, there are some parental control resources provided by Apple and Android, and I believe, Ms. Masterson, are these also linked on the parent site? They will be shortly. Okay, great. So on that parent page after tonight, they will be linked there that we can go access them. I'll give you a little preview of it now. But essentially, these resource guides just talk you through, what kind of parental controls are available on these devices, how do you turn them on, give you some directions, So if we went with a smartphone for my niece Emily, who is 13, I might decide to go through with her mom and dad or parent guardian to turn on some of these restrictions instead of just giving her the full-blown smartphone, unless I think she might be ready for that. And if I do think she's ready for that, and we've set all our parental controls, our restrictions are in place, we feel good about where we're at, the next thing that might be a great idea for this situation is to sign a family media agreement. Is anyone in here familiar with something like this? Okay, I see some nods, yep. All right, this one also comes from Common Sense Media, so there's a lot of other options you could search online, but this was a great starting point. Essentially just goes through, some things that you want to set in place, expectations to have with your student, to say you're going to take care of it, you're going to charge it, you're going to be responsible, you're not going to make accounts that you shouldn't, you'll get permission, all of those things. So once you have one of those in place, then you can hopefully, if you have to address those things later, you can reference this and say, hey, remember when we agreed to this, and here are my expectations of you. So if we do need to go down that route, a family media agreement would be a great place to go. But Emily, I will need to, really think about our decision here and make a good choice to see what would work best for you.
Thank you. You used to be my favorite aunt. You said she was a middle schooler, so I was just trying to really get into the role.
I understand, yeah.
In the meantime, that's fine, but can I have a MySpace account?
MySpace, interesting choice.
She's a 90s baby.
Yeah, okay. All right, so potentially, but let's see what Common Sense Media says. So we're going to go back over to that tab, and this time Ms. Masterson pointed out the For Educators tab, and you may have noticed there's a For Parents tab. So we're going to navigate back to Common Sense Media, click on For Parents, and let's search for MySpace. I'll give you a second to do that. Remember that Emily is 13, middle school student. MySpace does still exist. It has taken on a little bit of a different form. It's more of like a music social media site now. Not from my day, but that's okay. All right, so when I pull up MySpace here, I have a couple pictures. I see that it says age 13 and up, and then there's some things over on the right-hand side, different ratings, different areas, positive content. Anyone out there want to say what they would do in this situation for my 13-year-old niece? Would you allow her to make a MySpace account? It's a tough choice.
I heard someone say they would not.
They would not, okay.
Any reasons that you might choose not to do this for your child based on the reviews?
Oh.
So you're reading some of the comments?
Oh dear. Could be very scarring. All right, so the age, is 13 and up. Emily is 13, so I could talk with her and decide if that's an appropriate move to make. But like Ms. Masterson mentioned, what's great about Common Sense Media is that it just gives you the information for you to make the best choice for your student, for your child, for your family. So kind of decide from there. I don't know if I would or not, just because MySpace isn't even cool anymore. But, we'll go on from there. And see.
And now we are ready to move on to Act 3 of our play, which takes place in the high school. The setting is the media center of a large high school, perhaps one in Carmel, Indiana. Ethan has just gotten a pass to have the technicians troubleshoot his problem accessing Canvas on his cell phone.
Excuse me, Mr. Howell. I was just in Mrs. Smith's class, and she gave us the option of submitting our assignments in Canvas using our phones to take a picture, and mine just wouldn't connect. I'm sure I'm connected to the CCS Wi-Fi, and I stopped by the Tech Help Center at registration to make sure that I had the Content Keeper certificate installed.
Well, Ethan, I'm so sorry you're having this problem. Let's take a look at your device. Now, it looks like you may have VPN software installed on this device. Is that true?
Well, yeah, because my friend said I needed one, so I downloaded super cool and totally free VPN.
Ah, well, that
You probably heard of a VPN before. It's even possible you've used one before. But do you know what it does? A VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, which basically means it gives you privacy online. Originally, VPNs were only used in business settings where big businesses, organizations, or governments wanted to secure their data. Since people worked remotely and needed to connect online, businesses needed to create a secure connection. Otherwise, they were at risk for hacking or other loss of data. Nowadays, VPNs are used by everyone, specifically because it ensures your location stays private, your data is encrypted, and that you can surf the web.
Now, that all sounds really good. But Carmel schools, like all public schools and libraries, are required to filter all devices that are connected to our internet. And we do that to keep not only your device safe from information being stolen off of it, but also for inappropriate material and possible malware. So the reason your device isn't working right now is because of that VPN software. Once we uninstall that, I'm sure it will work.
Well, if a VPN are so bad, if the VPN is so bad, why does my mom have one on her laptop for work?
Well, that is a great question. First, kudos to the company that your mother works for keeping their company's data safe. So as we learned in the video earlier, VPNs, they encrypt this data. So if this web traffic were ever intercepted during like a open or free wireless network source, a bad actor, they wouldn't be able to do anything with it. They wouldn't be able to decipher that information. So as your mom works remotely, whether that be from a Starbucks or a hotel stay for a conference, she's keeping her company's data safe by having that encrypted while using those potentially untrusted network sources. So another thing to consider too, the VPN software that your mother's using is probably from a paid and reputable source that is also managed and configured by her local IT staff. So some good things to have there. So while super totally cool free VPN might be great and might give you that great VPN service, might be free, but they're probably making money on the back end by selling your data, and that's not cool. So when you're on a trusted network though, say for instance like a home network or your school or business, there may not necessarily be a need for a VPN only because we already have security measures in place that keep your device safe and secure. So one other thing to consider is that if you use a VPN in order to bypass filtering measures, as Mr. Howell mentioned, you would be in violation of the responsible use policy that you signed during your registration. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so just to ask one more. So if I go on my Chromebook and it says your connection is not secure, I should not continue on. I should stop.
It's a good way to go right there. So when it's not secure and if you're not on site, say for instance at your school or business, that's where something I would say, hey, let's slow down, maybe not do some credit card transactions over there because again, we don't necessarily know who's in charge of that network at that point. Are they keeping their stuff up to date? And who's listening in between? So things to consider. And that's when a VPN would be a good use.
Thank you. I guess I'll delete that super cool and totally free VPN from my phone. And now I guess I can access my Canvas again.
Fantastic.
I have a question about the VPN thing.
Oh, don't sit down, gentlemen.
Don't. You gotta go back. I have questions. I would like for you to myth bust, because I have a high schooler who says that she has to have a VPN because if she doesn't, the Wi-Fi at the high school is very slow. Now, I immediately said, sorry, not sorry, but what do you guys, can you myth bust that for me?
Sure, that's, given that information, it would be dependent on the site. We have Wi-Fi coverage throughout the building. Mr. Cronin can speak more about that. But we also have, we do watch our bandwidth and how much we have available at the high school. And it's something I keep on one of my screens at all times to watch to make sure that we're not reaching that maximum. So it's definitely not lack of internet services for the location. Any sites that are potentially blocked or maybe having trouble, there's a couple reasons why a website might have trouble getting through our system as far as filtering goes. But any site that needs to be unblocked, the student could ask the teacher, and the teacher can put in a formal request.
Thank you. And I ask that because I'm sure that that is not the first excuse that a high schooler has told their parents of why they need to have one. So I appreciate you letting, which I already knew, that the internet at Carmel High School is fine.
It is.
Thank you.
All right, and so that is the end of Act 3, and we are ready for any questions that you might have.
I just had more of a comment as my high school student. So I didn't believe him, much as like many of us who have high schoolers might not believe them when they first say something. That he said he had a form. I had a form I needed to fill out to let him use YouTube at high school, and so I thought, oh sure, no, but it was a parent permission. Either I could decline or I had to go into Power School though. And do it and either decline or accept. So he was telling the truth, but I like to know that that's blocked most of the time for unnecessary usage. So that was just my comment.
Yes, that was a new change this fall due to some changes that Google and YouTube made with permissions, where we have to have explicit written consent to allow YouTube access. And again, we only allowed that for high school age students with parental consent. Even if they do consent to allow access to YouTube, all of that content is still filtered, and we still have YouTube on a safe mode so that you're not getting all of the YouTube content that you might get at home. In addition, students who are not consented to having direct access to YouTube can still access educational content from YouTube if their teacher posts that information directly in their Canvas. So they can't search freely on YouTube, but they can see the resources that they need for educational purposes. So thank you for mentioning that, because that was new this fall. Other questions? Uh-huh.
The button. Is it working? There we go.
It's
On
fabulous.
school-provided devices like the Chromebooks, or I notice we have Windows laptops, I think I know the answer to this, but can you connect a cell phone and tether it to it and use it to get around the school network?
If your parents have purchased for you a hotspot, yes, you can connect to a hotspot and attempt to circumvent our access.
In what cases would we allow that?
Well, we allow a student to connect their Chromebook to a wireless network, because otherwise when they went home at night, they would not be able to connect to their wireless network. So we have to allow their access to a wireless network in order for them to be able to use the device for educational purposes. We do not, therefore, prevent them from connecting to a hotspot.
Do you ever find that as a problem where they may access things or malware or other nefarious things to get on the device, and then it's brought into the school network? And
So all of our devices are Chromebooks, so the risk related to malware are far less with a Chromebook than there would be on a Windows device. So we do not have a tremendous problem with that on the student devices, no.
yeah, and that was going to be my next question is, I notice we have Chromebooks for students, and I'm not sure who else, and then Windows laptops for others, and I was trying to understand in what cases you make a decision, a Windows laptop versus a Chromebook.
These are Chromebooks.
Correct. Both Ms.
They're Chromebooks.
Pagrosinski
Oh, these are Chromebooks?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Ms.
okay.
Masterson are both using Chromebooks. About 75% of our teaching staff now use a Chromebook as their full-time device. So we have done an initiative called Reboot, where we have been working to change the space that's in our classroom. Teachers have traditionally had a desktop computer and a fixed document camera, and they were pretty stationary to the front of their room. And so instead, what we have done is kind of rebooted that classroom. Each teacher receives both a Chromebook, and it's a Chromebook Plus, so it's a higher-end Chromebook than you might see the 99-cent sale on Thanksgiving, Black Friday type of thing. It's a higher-end device. And then they also receive a document camera iPad. So instead of using the traditional document camera, they use an iPad, which then gives them the best of both worlds, because now they have access to the internet on the iPad, and they can use a variety of apps for educational purposes with their students, but they can also use it as a traditional document camera. So that is what we have done in our classroom. That's really to allow the teachers to have more flexibility, more movement around the room. We all know that if I can move over and check on little Eric, who's off task perhaps here on an assignment, and bring my device with me, or I can sit down next with Mr. Eric and I can help him edit his assignment on Canvas or on his Google Doc that he's working on, that is a much more effective strategy than every kid having to come up to me, to my desk all day long. So that's really what that Reboot initiative has been after.
Great, great. And just one last question. You offered tonight a couple really good suggestions that I think parents would benefit from, like the different kinds of cell phones to, limit control for younger kids or watches and things, and then the common sense media. Do you share that with, have a class of sorts for the parents?
Yes, so last year, well, we have, for a number of years, we've done different sessions. Our SROs have done a great job of being a partner in the digital space, and they have offered many sessions at our school. And then last year, for the first time, between the Student Services Department and the Technology Department together, we presented a digital safety night for parents across the district. We had it at a couple different locations, and we intend to offer that again a little bit later this fall or into the winter, do another round of that session and some small group discussions where parents can talk to each other. And for each family, it's different, as we've said with these tools tonight. What might be right for my child who's 17 might be very different than what's right for your son or daughter or your grandchildren or your nieces and nephews, And so what we're really trying to do is help people understand what tools are out there that they can use to make sure they're making the best decision for themselves, for their student, and for their classroom as a teacher.
Good, excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One comment I'd like to make prior to that, you mentioned in the past before, if you were able to connect a tether device, we have a hotspot to certain some of our security policies we have in place. Our student Chromebooks, they have policies in place that when the CCS network is in range, they cannot switch from that.
Thank you.
So only when they go home, that is when they are able to go ahead and connect additional networks.
Wow.
And filtering is still applied.
Absolutely.
They have the same filtering at school and at home.
Okay, good.
I had a question and then it just escaped me. Well, if I remember it, but I do want to commend you guys. I think you do a really good balance of my daughter uses her personal MacBook when she goes to school, and so I think you do a great job of, making sure that the same things through the Wi-Fi are still applicable, that she's able to use a MacBook for the things that she needs to, but yet she's also still under the same controls and parental things also. Another thing now I remember I was going to talk about is I love that you're sharing the Apple and Android settings. We are an Apple family, and the resources and control I have over my students' devices drives them crazy, and I love it. I can set time periods where they can't get text messages except for me. Throughout the day, they only can receive if mom, like I just told you, breaks the rules and sends her a text during the day, that I'm the only one who can go. She has to, which drives her crazy. If she wants an app, I have to approve it. I get a notification. It shuts her phone and stuff off at certain times. So I think empowering parents to make those decisions and knowing that those are even options. I'm married to a geek, and so I'm all up in that, but not everyone is. And so I think it's really amazing, and I love that you're empowering parents, like you said, to make the right decisions for their families. And there is so much that if, you guys do a great job of setting a standard of content control, but if they want to go farther than that, they absolutely can.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you. Oh, yes. Sorry, I meant to have the bell ring and return you to your desk, and I didn't move on to that next slide. But yes, please remember to grab your cell phone and head on back to your desk. I thought you were going to leave it there, Dr. B. Thank you.
When Dr. Beresford gets back up here, it will be he will be up on deck with his report.
All right, great night tonight. Congratulations there, technology team. You guys crushed it tonight, and a lot of really good information and a wide breadth of that. For those of you who don't know, the technology team made it a goal to become a trusted learning environment, which is a very heavy lift, and completed that whole process a year earlier than we anticipated. So they're a bunch of overachievers, and we appreciate you. So let's give them 3 claps and a whoosh. Those of you that don't know what that is, you'll pick up on it quick. Tonight, I am representing the Wildcats, of Creekside Middle School, and so you can see I think I did borrow this from Dr. Ostrike, but I am wearing my Creekside Wildcat Argyle socks proudly tonight. And I want to do a shout out to Principal Stephen Pellich, Assistant Principals Jessica Tubbs and Dave Jennings, and Athletic Director Andy Hartog, and their talented team of educators, and of course their incredible students and families out at Creekside. The Creekside Wildcat Nation is just fantastic, and I wanted to represent them tonight. I'm going to go fast, but in the world of sports, soccer sectional championships were last weekend, and girls won handily, but the guys' second sectional game in a row came down to penalty kicks, and we won 5-4. So it was a really hotly contested against Noblesville, who have had multiple state championships recently. So they just are nail biters, but doing a great job. And those regionals are coming up this week, and they'll have a game this week, and then championships will be for both will be on Saturday afternoon, Saturday night at Murray Stadium here at Carmel. Unified Flag Football Team will be in the state championship Saturday at Grand Park there in Westfield, indoors. So they're looking for a two-peat. They won the state in flag football last year. So hopefully we'll have I know one thing's for sure, win or lose, they're going to have a great time. And if you really want your heart full, go to a unified sporting event. It's fantastic. Volleyball sectionals are going on right now as well, and we're going to be playing Westfield, I think. Saturday, our competition cheer teams participate in state championship at Newcastle, and then boys and girls cross country sectionals begin on Saturday morning. They'll be at North Central High School, and that is the actual greatest sport in the world, cross country, so I encourage everybody to be there. And then if you're really looking for some fun, on Monday, our esports team is going to be doing a Tetris tournament. And those of you who love Tetris, that'll be a great time. So I only have 2 other things. One is I'm going to call it the OPE teaser. I wanted to give a little teaser for our October 28th board meeting. We're going to share with the board and the community a future vision for the Orchard Park property. And so I thought particularly our OPE home place families and community members might want to heads up on that, because I think you're going to love that presentation. So just a little teaser there. And then I have my bell ringer, which is on Friday night, my wife and I attended the community night for the marching band. And if you ever get a chance to do that, you just make sure you do that, because it's pretty amazing. And this is when Mr. Krakey, who runs the Carmel Marching Greyhounds, explains each section of their show, just one section at a time, and then he'll explain it, and then they play that section. Then he explains the next section and goes through the entire show. So you actually, when there's all those billions of things are going on, it gives you an insight onto what it is about the music and how the music matches the movement and all the guard and all the little things they do. It's amazing. And then the grand finale at the end of it, then they play the whole show in a row. And so you're kind of informed as you go. And it's not the whole show, because there's always like a minute and a half or 2 minutes that they don't show until the big time comes. So but anyhow, it was it was just pretty amazing. So when it was all at once, it was just amazing. And then the highlight after the show was the alumni awards, when they give awards to former former Greyhound marching folks. And this is the introduction, and I thought I'd just share this, and then we'll close it off after that. But it says, and this was a parent that gave this introduction. At Carmel Bands, excellence is more than just what we achieve on the field. It is what we create together as a community. From students and staff to parents and supporters, everyone plays a role in our success. Community Night is more than just a performance. It's a celebration of our commitment, encouragement, and energy that each of you brings to our program. Your support fuels our students' passion and motivates them to reach even higher. Whether it's volunteering time, supporting the program financially, or cheering on from the stands, you help us strive for excellence every day. As we gather here for Community Night, we are reminded that excellence is not built alone. It is built with the strength of the entire Carmel Bands family, including the Carmel Clay School Board and the Carmel High School administration. Thank you all for being a part of this incredible journey and for making moments like these possible. Study after study has shown that participation in music positively affects grades, attitude, and the behavior of our students and fosters their pursuit of teamwork, dedication, and excellence. Carmel Marching Band equips our students for life in school and beyond. And if there's not a better example of together we achieve, I don't know if there is one, as good as the Marching Greyhounds. And if you get a chance, you can probably look on their website and see the 3 people that got their alumni awards are just doing amazing things in a lot of different fields. And so that little paragraph about how it prepares them for the future absolutely played out in those alumni awards. And with that, I will end my superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beresford. May I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Katie. A second? Second. Thank you, Jennifer. Meeting is adjourned.